Hello and welcome to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides, here to look ahead to Matchday 2 in the biggest club competition in the world. I'm joined by Ian Broadrick from Betting Emporium and Mark O'Hare from We Love Betting. Hi guys, we've got a lot to get through actually. There's some really good games in Matchday 2. Before we get to those, just want to ask you both, what sort of caught your eye on Matchday 1? Because we had some really unexpected results. Salzburg thrashing Genk 6-2 kind of stood out. Dinamo Zagreb thrashing Atalanta. Liverpool losing. Chelsea losing. What caught your eye from a betting perspective and from a football perspective as well? Mark?
I'm not going to take huge amounts away from Matchday 1, if I'm honest. It's probably quite a boring answer, really, but it's still very, very early in the season for a lot of clubs, particularly in Italy and Spain. They probably only play 3 or 4 club games before that Champions League first round, so it's difficult to make real snap judgments. There were a few surprise results, but if I was to take something away, it's more kind of a longer-term view. Spurs and Liverpool reached the final. They were panned for their away performances in Matchday 1. Barcelona and Real Madrid also failed to win away from home and were pretty dreadful in their games as well. So if you look at last year's final, Spurs didn't win a group stage game away from home. Liverpool lost all 3 group stage games away from home. I wouldn't be going too overboard on teams who didn't perform, not just in Matchday 1, but even away from home throughout the group stage, because it's proven now that get results at home and you're in a decent position to qualify, and then anything can happen thereafter. So it's just it's a bit of a boring answer, but I'm kind of just reserving judgment on a lot of these teams until we've seen at least 2 or 3 games.
It's a good answer because you're right, isn't he, brothers, that it's occasionally difficult to back teams away from home in the group stages, even ones that you think have got a good chance. We've seen that anything can happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Mark, as usual, has hit the nail on the head. I think it's very early to be making any sort of drastic assumptions about stuff. I think actually the markets often do overreact, and I think this week we've potentially got some opportunities where the market has taken away too much information from those first games. So, no, I think overall, I was surprised at Atalanta, if I'm honest. That was the really sort of shocking performance for me, because I don't rate Dinamo Zagreb particularly highly in this company. And I thought Atalanta would really sort of flourish in that sort of game. So too early to write them off. And actually, it may give us some opportunities with them in the further games in the group stages. But no, I thought it was extremely interesting. I love it, honestly. So,
yeah. All right, let's move on and discuss one of the big games on Matchday 2. 2 sides who didn't have a particularly good run of things on Matchday 1. Barcelona hosting Inter Milan. Barca, who drew 0-0 with Borussia Dortmund, and Inter Milan, who drew 1-1 with Slavia Prague. They very easily could have lost that game. They didn't. Actually, at the end, they could have won it as well, but it ended up a 1-1 draw. You can get Barca at around about 1.60, Inter at around about 5.8, and the draw is around about 4.3. Brothers, what are you thinking for this game? What's the angle?
I'm not sure, actually. I mean, Mark probably has some firmer opinions on this one. I think Barcelona's problems are very well documented at the moment. I think Messi has obviously been injured at the start of the season. That's highlighted what a huge loss he is, without stating the obvious, because he's the best player arguably that's ever played the game. I think they've struggled with Griezmann fitting into the system. Suarez looks unfit, frankly. I don't know if that's a case of age catching up on him, or simply that he's had an enjoyable summer. But I think there's a lot of discomfort in the club at the moment. Valverde is coming under pressure. But this is what Barcelona do. I mean, Barcelona are not good away from home generally, even in La Liga, but generally in the Champions League. Valverde has pursued a policy of being quite defensive, conservative even, unless the opposition give them an opportunity to allow Messi to be Messi. For example, when Spurs played them, a year or 2 ago, when Messi scored that wonderful hat-trick and they won 4-2. Generally speaking, though, Barcelona have tried to be more conservative away from home, and they were fortunate to get a draw at Dortmund. Historically, Spanish sides have struggled a little bit with Italian sides, just generally. I mean, Barca obviously at home don't struggle with anyone generally. So on the one hand, you've got a Barcelona side who are not in a great place. They're not performing anywhere near the level that they could on paper. We don't know if Messi will be fit. I think that's going to obviously have a huge impact on the markets and our expectations. They take on an Inter side now managed by one of my favourite managers. I'm a Chelsea fan, as you know, and I was gutted that Conte only lasted as long as he did with us. I think Conte is fantastic, and he's exactly what Inter needed. He's an organiser. He's a disciplinarian. He brings solidity to teams. I mean, you only have to look at what happened to the Italian national team when he took over. They went from being a shambles to this well-drilled, well-organised side who were competing for titles again. And he is brilliant. And Inter have started the season winning every single game, bar that Slavia Prague game that you've just mentioned, which was their one bad performance. So again, what do you draw from that? Do you draw from that they may struggle in Europe? It's too early to tell. I mean, they played Barcelona in the group stages last year and lost 2-0. I could easily see that kind of a game happening again. Also, I could see, Inter maybe grabbing a draw. Honestly, I don't have any firm opinion on this. I think it's incredibly hard to have a view, unless Mark, I'm sure Mark will correct me on that, but it's just a very, very tough game to weigh up, because of the lack of form for Barca, the questions over Messi, and the quality that Conte brings in terms of tactical and management style to Inter, who've got the talent and they've got rid of the troublemakers. They've got rid of Icardi, who was the main issue, and they look happy at the moment. So,
Podders, you're very, very eloquently sitting on the fence here, which is
fine.
You're allowed to.
Splinters are going up my bottom as we speak.
Yes, they are. Let's try and pull them out and hear from Mark, who I think does have a slightly more firmer opinion on this game.
Yeah, I am with Barca. I think Ernesto Valverde really dodged a bullet on Saturday when they went to Getafe. A week before that game, they were 1.44 to win away at Getafe, which was probably the worst price of the season, but they actually went off even money, which was probably one of the best bets of the season, really. They fronted up, they got the victory. They weren't fantastic. They survived a few scares, but more importantly, they got the victory, despite having no Messi, no Dembele, no Ansu Fati either. Pretty dreadful at Granada the week before, uninspiring against Villarreal. It's hard to know which Barcelona we're going to get, but more often than not, we do tend to get a good Barcelona at home in the Champions League, whether Messi's playing or not. So, Rod has mentioned that game against Inter last October. They went off around 1.5 for that game. They're a bit bigger here, which I think is probably factoring the Messi absence, but we don't know if he's going to be fit or not. I hope he is fit, but Inter have got this strange relationship with the Champions League. Not Inter. Conte has a strange relationship with the Champions League. He's never really performed in it. And I thought the market was really interesting before that Prague game because they drifted like a barge. They went off at a really big price. They were odds on, but obviously the market didn't fancy something. The team sheet was pretty strong and they put in a stinking performance as well. So something's not quite right there when Conte Cup reaches the Champions League. I'm not sure what it is. It kind of puts doubts into my mind really about this Inter team. The league form has been results-based, absolutely fantastic, which is probably what you'd expect Conte to hit the ground running there. But performance levels haven't been as strong as those results. I think on the opening day they were very convincing, and on Saturday then against Sampdoria they were probably putting one of their better performances when they rested and rotated a few players. Lukaku and Godin dropped out, but even still they have been more workmanlike than spectacular. So. You just look at this Barcelona record. I know we don't know about Messi, obviously, but they've won 29 of 32 unbeaten Champions League home games since 2013-14. That's included beating PSG, Man City, Bayern, Atletico, Juve, Inter, Liverpool. They've scored at least 3 goals in 21 of those 32 games and won by 3 or more goals on 16 occasions. So it's very hard to dismiss that kind of record. It feels like they're kind of home, really, on a Tuesday, Wednesday night at home in the Champions League. They come to the party. I just think the price in Barcelona is fair enough at the moment, and if you get them with a minus 3/4 handicap around 1.85 or bigger, I think that's fair enough. You're making money if Barcelona win. I wouldn't be surprised if they just see this game out 1-0, 2-0. Doubts over Inter in the Champions League, particularly under Conte. So for that reason, I'm with Barca.
You mentioned Leo Messi. We don't know if he's going to be 100% fit. Even if he starts, the game. We still don't know how fit he is if he's going to start, because he played a couple of weeks ago and had to go off at half time, and he's got a groin strain, and who knows. And Barcelona with Messi and without Messi, as we know, very, very different. So keep an eye on the team sheet when it's announced, and any news before, because that could be absolutely vital before making any selections for this game. But Mark seems pretty confident with or without Leo Messi that Barcelona's record at home is good enough to get something out of this game. Let's move on and talk about a game that Brothers was more keen to talk about than Barcelona-Inter, which is Lille against Chelsea. Lille, who were beaten 3-0 by Ajax on Matchday 1, and Chelsea, who were beaten 1-0 at home by Valencia. You can get Lille around about 3.90, Chelsea at around about even money, 2.05, and the draw at 3.56. Mark, we liked the price for overs in the game at Stamford Bridge, Chelsea-Valencia. We don't need to dwell on that. It's fine. Didn't come out. The stats backed it up. It was a good bet. Just didn't happen. Brothers, what are you thinking for this one?
More of the same, frankly. I think this is a good example of what I was talking about, the market overreacting on one result, not even a performance. Lille obviously lost 3-0 to Ajax in the first game, and that would imply that they were outclassed and outgunned. But I thought they played all right in that game, and I thought Ajax, unusually for Ajax, were very efficient in front of goal, and took their chances extremely well and scored some good goals. Lille at home are a totally different proposition, and obviously I'm a Chelsea fan. I'm looking for Chelsea to do well, but looking at the market, I'm frankly amazed at how this is being priced. I mean, Chelsea, I was there yesterday when they beat Brighton 2-0. It was a decent enough performance, but Brighton could easily have scored. It was the first clean sheet Chelsea have kept all season. And defensively, we are not good, and you just have to accept that. I think Frank Lampard is bringing in all these young players who are incredibly exciting. We're playing some gorgeous football. And as a fan, it's what we've been waiting for ages. But it does mean that Chelsea are conceding goals, they're scoring goals, and I see that continuing for the foreseeable future. So, Callum Hudson-Odoi came on the sub yesterday. He's returning to fitness. But again, just as a club, Chelsea are playing this very sort of aggressive attacking style. Now, Lille at home, you can't underestimate how good they are. They've won, I think they've won their last 8 Ligue 1 games going back to last season. And, they beat PSG 5-1 there in April. Now, all right, that was a bit of a dead rubber. But, no, yeah, I get that. But, I mean, you look at their performances, and this season they've beaten St Etienne, Angers, Strasbourg. Strasbourg and St Etienne are decent sides. And they're not just, they're winning these convincingly. So I think Lille at home, both sides have lost their opening games. So there's going to be an onus on them both to pick some points up from this, ideally 3. I think we could see a very entertaining match. Lille, if you look at the way that they play, their style hasn't changed greatly since last season. So obviously Pepe has gone to Arsenal, but they've brought in Osimhen, who's a very sort of exciting young Nigerian striker who scored, I think, 6 in 7 or 7 or 8 or something like that. Sorry, forgive me. And he is very quick and very dynamic, and they've still got Bamba there, and they play this fast attacking style that Chelsea are going to really struggle with. Now that's, Chelsea are going to have their own chances, and Lille showed that, in their first game with Ajax, that they have a defence that you can get at. So, for me, this has got all the sort of ingredients for being an exciting, open game with goals at either end. So getting over 2.5 near even money. I mean, frankly, getting over 2.5 near even money on any Chelsea game this season is going to be value. And especially against a good side like Lille, who I think I will be absolutely astonished if Lille don't score once or twice in this game. But then Chelsea could score 2 or 3. It's that kind of game. And looking at the markets, my view was that over 2.5 is cracking value. And I think even you can get Lille with a quarter goal start at sort of 2.21. And that in itself as well is very, very good value, I think, because you've got a young Chelsea side lacking in experience in Europe. There's going to be some, mistakes made. And I hate to say it as a Chelsea fan, but for me, Lille and goals are the value in this one.
In our pre-show production meeting, which is a conversation on our WhatsApp group, Brodders was very keen to talk about this game, and Mark, not so much. You didn't necessarily think there was the biggest angle here. Has Brodders convinced you, Mark, that overs could be an angle in this game?
No, I did. I was happy to talk about it because I've got very strong views on this game as well. Just like Brothers, I just thought that in terms of the match, it wasn't quite standout quality. That's all. That's probably my QPR bias, just dissing Chelsea. But
how dare you?
But no, I've been nodding along to everything Brothers said there. I'm in total agreement. I have to say there are positive signs for Chelsea fans now. The Valencia game was very unfortunate. They should have got a point at least in that game, if not won it. Applied themselves very well against Liverpool. They've shown versatility, adaptability in terms of their system and approach under Lampard. And Brighton again at the weekend, I thought that was a real banana skin game for them, particularly with N'Golo Kante being ruled out as well, Rudiger out. But you look at the team sheet he played, the front six of Jorginho, Mount, Barkley, Willian, Abraham, Pedro. It's very, very attack-minded, but they're absolutely excellent. It was probably their most convincing display. Probably the first time Brighton been well beaten this season too. So I think there's lots of positives going forward. Again, the issues in defence can't be really ignored. Don't know about N'Golo Kante. Looks like he's got a tight hamstring. Feels like quite a quick turnaround really, especially with an international break coming up. You'd probably be inclined to rest him if possible. But Lille, really like Lille. I think they've been massively underrated. They shouldn't have lost 3-0 to Ajax. Absolutely superb last year, 500 to 1 for the title. And we're easily the best behind PSG in the league. Got a great recruitment structure behind the scenes there, similar to what Monchi does at Sevilla. Really just replaces big name players with up and coming youngsters. They've got 17 wins from 23 at home in France since the start of last season. Christophe Galtier, their tactician, their head coach, loves these kind of situations against the big teams at home. So I think there'll be a real force in this match, and I think they've got plenty of players who can cause Chelsea issues. So I'm with Brothers completely here. And goals are definitely the best bet, but next best would be to oppose Chelsea and find a Lille-based angle.
I'm starting to think Lille might be a good bet here. Everything that you guys have said. Obviously, I know you both watch Ligue 1 a lot more than I do, I confess. But yeah, you've made a really convincing argument for Lille to be able to, at the very least, contribute to a high-scoring game in France. Those two games that we've talked about are on Wednesday night. Anything else you want to talk about from Wednesday night, guys? Anything else that jumps out at you? You've got some big-ish game, Liverpool, Salzburg, Valencia, Ajax. I don't know. Otherwise, we'll move on to the Tuesday games.
I'm happy to swerve Wednesday. I've got a couple of others from Tuesday, but not really Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then to Tuesday's game. Talk about Tottenham against Bayern Munich. Spurs, who of course blew a 2-goal lead in Piraeus in Matchday 1 to draw 2-2 with Olympiacos. Bayern, who got there in the end. They were pretty comfortable against Red Star. It took them a while to find a real to get the second goal, but in the end they beat the Serbians by 3-0. In North London on Tuesday night, Spurs are 2.92, around about there, to win. You can get Bayern at around about 2.3, 2.34, and the draw is around about 3.95. Mark, you're keen to talk about this, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think it's the best game on the coupon this week. Spurs, it's been an odd week really. Huge criticism for Pochettino after the cup exit to Colchester. We're pretty fortunate to beat Southampton, really, considering the circumstances. Now, I know they're 10 points off Liverpool in the Premier League and they've been written off in the title race, which, it's probably fair enough. But City and Liverpool are so far ahead of the pack. It's not a massive negative, really. But I think criticism has been slightly over the top. I know it's a results industry and Spurs haven't been getting them consistently for a while. But, it wasn't long ago since they were competing in a Champions League final. So I'm not getting too negative towards Spurs just yet. Obviously, Aurier's red card didn't help them at the weekend, nor did Hugo Lloris's gaff. But I don't think they really care, considering those circumstances. They got the win, which is all that matters. And I look at them in this game, I think they're quite relish it, being underdogs, being written off, being coming into a match where the expectation is completely off them. Really, I might be probably overstating that a little bit, but certainly in sort of betting terms, Bayern Munich are clear and pretty strong favourites to win this game. And Bayern are top of the Bundesliga, fair enough, but I don't think they've been as dominant as that kind of results suggest. 4 of their first 6 games have come against the current bottom 4. On Saturday, the scoreline says they won 3-2 away at newly promoted Paderborn, which probably doesn't tell the full story. They were pretty dominant in that game, more so than most of their other Bundesliga games. And Felipe Coutinho scored and assisted. He's starting to sort of show his true colours, really. They are moving in the right direction. Lewandowski's in outstanding form at the minute too. And I think if you look at the 2 expected 11s for Tuesday, hands down, player for player, Bayern are definitely the stronger team. But I have my doubts over Bayern. PSG are the only team to beat them in the group stage in the last 2 years, but the opposition's been pretty poor. Ajax definitely rocked them last year in the group stage, home and away, and I think Spurs have the ability to cause them problems, because if you look at their performances under Niko Kovac, they've often struggled when facing teams who are quite quick in transition from defence to attack. And I think Spurs have the ability to do that with Son playing up front alongside Kane. RB Leipzig caused them numerous problems in the second half of the Bundesliga game, which ended in a draw. And if you actually, I know this is further back from the Kovac era, but look at Bayern's record domestically against teams who finished in the top 4. They've only won 3 of the last 16 away against top 4 finishes in Germany, scoring twice or more in 4 of those 16. So, Spurs are very Spursy, aren't they? But I think they do have the ability on the night to cause these big teams problems. Their record against the Big 6 and Champions League opponents in London since November time is very, very strong too. So I certainly wouldn't be writing them off. And I think I'd rather be with Spurs with the draw on side. Sort of odds against prices. You're looking at Spurs with a quarter goal start and Bayern around sort of similar prices. But it's a very tight game. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Bayern won this match. But I think at the prices, I just about prefer Spurs.
Okay, I mean, I am a Spurs fan. Regular listeners to the podcast will know, and it might be my inherent Spurs cynicism or negativity that makes me struggle to necessarily think Spurs are going to beat Bayern Munich on Tuesday night. Brothers, you are very much not a Spurs fan. How much do you agree with what Mark's saying here?
Yeah, I think you could say I'm very much not a Spurs fan. Mark makes a number of good points. I mean, I think one of the things to emphasise about Bayern is the fact that, Kovac has come in at a very difficult time, to be fair to him. Essentially, they've piggybacked Ribéry and Robben out wide for a number of years, who've both been astonishingly good. They've both left broadly at the same time, either retired or moved on. And what you have now is a Bayern team who are adjusting the way that they play. You look at the players that they have out wide now in Kingsley Coman and Serge Gnabry. They're clearly nowhere near the level of Ribéry and Robben, I think, but they're different players. Coman is a player who's got plenty of pace, but is not what it could be. And you could say possibly the same of Gnabry. And by bringing Coutinho in, what they're looking to do now is more of a sort of 4-2-3-1, and looking for the fullbacks to push up and give a lot more width. So you've got Pavard on the right, Hernandez on the left, and you're seeing a change of system for Bayern. Now, that has suited Lewandowski down to the ground. Mark mentioned he's on fire. He's got 10 goals in 6 games this season. And, he's a player who he's in the conversation for being the best striker in the world every single year. If you sort of ignore, an out-and-out striker, if you sort of put him just behind a Ronaldo or I wouldn't say Messi was a striker necessarily. And I think they are finding their feet. Going forwards, they're looking very good at the moment. And Mark mentioned at the weekend they conceded 2 goals to Paderborn. That is where Spurs' best hopes lie, is the fact that defensively Bayern are looking shaky at best. You look at the centre-back pairing, you've got Niklas Süle, who I rate very highly actually, but he's not kind of become the player that everyone expected him to become when he was younger. And then you've got Jerome Boateng alongside him, who is, he's a walking mistake. And then, at the back, you've got the Manuel Neuer situation, which is fantastic. I don't know if, you heard or read about it in the week, but, there was a suggestion that Ter Stegen was going to become the new Germany number 1. And Uli Hoeneß said that Bayern were not going to send any players to the national team if Manuel Neuer wasn't the number 1 goalkeeper for the national side, which is just, it's different.
I think they should do it. I think they should call Bayern's bluff.
Well, honestly, it's just fantastic, isn't it? Well, it did.
He's the best German goalkeeper at the moment. So
He is.
Well, he is definitely, and Neuer. That was kind of my point. Is Neuer is not the player that he was, and he's really, he's not playing to where he was even a few years ago. So I think for Spurs to get something from this game, they're going to have to outscore Bayern. I don't see either side keeping clean sheets. I'm kind of on the fence. I mean, I think Spurs are not playing very well at the moment, so I don't think necessarily they're going to win it. But I can understand where Mark's coming from in terms of the value on the handicaps. For me, I think getting over 3 goals at a shade over 2 is very fair as well. For me, this is a game that should have goals in it. I can't really see the defence keeping the other out, which is famous last words, obviously. But I think, it's one of those games again where it's a bit like the Barcelona game in the sense that you've got teams that are not necessarily playing to their full potential at the moment. That Spurs are throwing in silly mistakes left, right, and centre. Barcelona are still adjusting to Coutinho coming in, and he's starting to look very good. I just think it's a very difficult game to call in the sort of win markets, but I do fancy goals, if I'm honest.
Okay, fair enough. Goals in Spurs games could generally be a good angle, particularly how they're playing at the moment. Let's reflect on some other games on Tuesday night. I think, Mark, you had something you wanted to talk about for Tuesday?
Yeah, there's two games really, 2 underdogs who I like the look of really. Galatasaray given a 1.5 goal start at home to PSG, which feels quite tall really, quite nice. They had the derby against Fenerbahce the weekend. They drew 0-0. Very tame derby, no goals, only 3 cards. Very disappointing stuff really. But they are the champions of Turkey for the last 2 years. Not had a great amount to shout about in the Champions League for quite a while now. Only picked up 4 points in a really poor group last year. Obviously got PSG and Real in their group this time around, and starting with a 0-0 draw against Club Brugge isn't ideal really. They were second best in that game too, but I just think that handicap is pretty big for a reasonably decent team who've recruited pretty well in the summer. They've addressed their issues in attack, which is where their issues were last year. Falcao, Emre Moore, Ryan Babel, Florian Andone. They're not exactly Robert Lewandowski style strikers, but they're upgrades at least. They've also got Jean-Michel Seri.
Falcao was, in his day.
Yeah. Mario Lemina, Steven Nzonzi. Defensively, they're still giving away a few chances, and they need to improve for sure. But I kind of called a little bit on this because Mbappe came off the bench at PSG on Saturday, which suggests he's going to be fit for this. Neymar's obviously slotted back in pretty seamlessly. Cavani is still out, but they've still got Icardi, Di Maria, Sarabia as well. But PSG, I just question them still.
PSG beat Real Madrid 3-0 without any of their main strikers on Matchday 1, Mark. So are you're going to have to really convince me on this one. I'm sorry.
I'll try. Okay. That was at home, and we've talked about the issues for big teams away from home in Europe.
Okay. Yes.
They lost at home to Rams, a very robust Rams team last week. They've also only eked out kind of 1-0 wins away at Lyon and Strasbourg. Tricky away games those for sure, but they've only covered the handicap in 4 of 10 games across all competitions this season. They started on Saturday at Bordeaux with Idrissa Gueye and Marquinhos in a midfield 3, which, despite all the potential attacking options in attack, suggests they've still got, I don't know, they're almost, Thomas Tuchel's taking almost a defensive approach when away from home. And if you actually just look at domestic games in isolation under Tuchel, they've got a 50% win ratio for winning by 2 or more goals, home and away in Ligue 1. That drops down to 39% when playing away from home. Galatasaray are better than most teams in Ligue 1. I wouldn't say all of them, at least half of them at least. So just on that kind of terms, I think PSG will win this game. But if you're going to back PSG, I'd rather back them with to win by exactly 1 goal than to overcome a 1.5 goal handicap, because it's still a fair decent journey. The atmosphere's going to be pretty hot too. So yeah, okay. As I said, I've called a little bit just because Mbappe's probably going to play, which does change things.
Okay, fair enough. Brothers, you got anything else that catches your fancy on Tuesday night?
No, not wildly. I wouldn't necessarily agree with Mark on that one, if I'm honest.
I'm struggling to fully get on board with it, but I appreciate the effort there, Mark. But yeah,
well, he makes as good a case as he could with what he had at hand. But I think Mbappe coming back is huge. Obviously they're without Neymar still, which is the last of his now 2-game suspension. But I think, Galatasaray for some years now have been a long way off the pace of the top sides in Europe. And, you don't have to imagine them losing this by a couple of goals quite easily. I like Lamina and Nzonzi in the middle of midfield. I think that's strong. Evidently that's going to be quite a physical battle between them, Verratti, presumably Marquinhos and Gay. I mean, that's going to be, X-rated stuff at times, I suspect. But yeah, I think I don't love PSG enough to be saying, yes, you should definitely have -1.5, but I don't think I would.
You did last season.
Well, just to be clear, I have backed PSG again this season.
Again? Okay.
Well, I thought 11-1 with Neymar staying had the potential. I know it's like it's a disease. I can't.
I mean, it's good for us. It gives us content and things to laugh at. But I really don't think they're going to win.
Well, let's just bookmark this. Okay. We'll come back to this when they've lost. No, I think there's nothing. I think there's a few games which are interesting. I think Atalanta versus Shakhtar has the potential to have a lot of goals in it and be a fun game. I think Atalanta, I mentioned before, I was incredibly disappointed with their performance in Zagreb in the first round. I'm sure they would have been too. They're a team that scores tons of goals. Shakhtar play some lovely counter-attacking football as well. I think, if we're looking at games that are going to be good to watch, that could be one that could be an absolute barnstormer. And I think, backing goals in that is certainly something to consider. But I think a lot of them are quite trappy this week, actually. You look at a lot of the sort of bigger sides going away. Real, your beloved Real are at home to Club Bruges.
They are.
Anyone's guess what's going to happen there.
I'd say a home win. But...
Well, the market would suggest that, wouldn't it? But I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that Real have thrown in a stinker at home.
They don't tend to in the group stages of the Champions League at home. They tend to be pretty strong.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
That's okay. I'm just stating facts.
Anyway, no. So of the other games, I think Atalanta versus Shakhtar would definitely be one to watch and to potentially look at goals into.
Okay.
Can I chuck in one more, which you'll probably both disagree with me again?
Okay.
But it's just another underdog at home, really. I think Lokomotiv Moscow with the 1-goal start on the Asian line against Atletico, 1.75-ish is nice for me, really. Atletico, 11 wins from 32 away from home in this competition since they came back into the Champions League. Only 5 of those by at least 2 goals. There certainly are sort of teething problems with that squad. Big turnover in the summer. Moscow is one of the longest trips they'll face, just 72 hours after a Madrid derby. And also, not just that, it's also the travel, the schedule, but the temperature too. It's going to be 15 to 20 degrees cooler in Moscow than it is in Madrid at the moment. So Lokomotiv are great. They're okay. Defensively, they're pretty sound. They're very similar, actually, to Atletico Madrid and how they're set up. They don't score many goals, like to keep things pretty tight as well. So I wouldn't be asking anyone to go and watch this match because it's probably going to be pretty dour. But I just think any team at home with a 1-goal start to Atletico Madrid is worth worth looking at, really. So I don't imagine either of you two will massively agree with me, but I think they're a nice underdog to have on side.
Listen, we'll talk about it next week. See what happens. I'm reserving judgment. Before we go, because we're just about out of time, let's get your best bets of the week. So if you had to put everything you have on one, not everything you had, but if you had to sort of invest heavily on one bet this week, what are your best bets of the week? Brothers, we'll start with you.
Goals in Lille versus Chelsea. Going over 2.5 at around even money is great value. Whatever happens, it's great value. So that'll be the one for me.
Okay. And Mark?
This has to be a first because I'm in full agreement. I think overs at Lille Chelsea is the best bet of the Champions League this week. I think all the goal lines across Europe are really, really high this week. This one isn't. And this is the one I would look towards for a high-scoring game. So, goals at Lille.
Okay, you heard it here. The best bet of the week is to back overs in Lille against Chelsea. That's it for this edition of the Matchbook Champions League podcast, but we'll be back ahead of Matchday 3 as ever to look ahead to that round of fixtures and to reflect on what happened on Matchday 2 and see how we get on with our selections, and to also maybe talk about Broadrick's bet about PSG to win the Champions League as well. We're not going to let that one go. Thank you for joining us, and remember, you can subscribe to the Matchbook Betting Podcast on your preferred podcasting app.